Our instruction says solve each equation by completing the square. And on my homework, this was a homework, I see that there's two boxes that I have to complete. And then there's the word and in between. So it seems like I'm going to have two answers. It says solve each equation by completing the square. Okay, so far this week we have been talking about completing the square. What I'm going to do is make sure that everything that has a letter, I'm going to put it on the left side of the equal sign. Everything that does not have a letter, I'm going to put it on the right side. So looking at 21. N squared plus 2n will stay on the left side of my equal sign. So as a matter of fact, let me write it like this. N squared plus 2n. Let me leave a space right there. I'm going to use the space later. And this is equal to 8. Notice the 8, I'm going to put it on the right side. And I'm going to use the space after the 8 in a minute. What I'm going to do, let me complete the squared on the left side. So my leading coefficient, it's a 1, so that's good. Then I see my second number, it is positive 2. And then I ask myself, well, what's the half of 2? In this case, it's 1. So let me write, with the sign included, I'm going to write plus 1. Right? The half of 2 is 1. And then what is 1 squared? So what is 1 times 1? What is 1 multiplied by itself? Well, 1. So let me add a 1 to both sides. Very, very similar to what we did yesterday. On the left side, this trinomial n squared plus 2n plus 1, we've been talking about completing the squared. This thing is going to factor as n plus 1 all square. On the right side, 8 plus 1, I'm going to call that 9, right? 8 plus 1 is 9. My question is solve. So I need to find the value of n. And I completed the square because now I'm going to get rid of the squared using a square root. I know a square root and a squared exponent cancel each other out. So I'm going to have that n plus 1 is equal to, then I had to think, well, what's the square root of 9? What number multiplied by itself gives me 9? Well, it's either positive 3 or negative 3, right? So I'm going to include both cases, positive or negative 3. I have to include both cases. So the square root of 9 is positive 3 or negative 3, both cases. Okay, so I see where my n is, n plus 1. Let me get rid of this plus 1 by moving it to the other side. So I have that n, it's equal to positive or negative 3 minus 1. That's what I'm going to use for my two solutions. I basically have that n is equal to negative 3 minus 1, and n is equal to positive 3 minus 1. Okay, I ask myself, what's negative 3 minus 1? Well, that's negative 4, right? That's my first answer. For the other answer, I'd look at 3 minus 1. Well, what's 3 minus 1? 2. That's my second answer. So that's why I have two boxes. There's going to be two answers. Make sure from the two answers, you start with the smallest number. So notice on the plus or minus, I did the minus first. That's what's going to give me my lowest value. So if you write a 2 and a negative 4, you write the 2 first. On paper, I will say, that's fine on paper. But because we're doing it online, I want you to write the smallest number first. Negatives are smaller than positives. So negative 4 and positive 2. All right, let's do it again. Let's take a look at number 22. Let's look at another example. I know that at the end, I have to give two answers. I see two spaces. So what I'm going to do, everything that has a letter, I'm going to move it to the left side. So let me move this here. So this 8n, it's on the right side. Let me move it to the left side as a minus 8n. This negative 23 on the left side, let me move it to the right side as positive 23. Don't forget to switch signs. So on the left side, I have n squared minus 8n, and let me leave a space, equals 20. Right, -3 and a +23 give me +20. I'm looking on the left side. I want to complete the square. My leading coefficient is 1, so that's good. I look at the second number, -8. The half of -8 is -4. -4 squared. So what's -4 times a -4? It's 16. Right? -4 squared is 16. So let me add a 16 here on each side. On the left side, n squared minus 8n plus 16 is n minus 4 all squared. I was completing the square. Looking on the right side, 20 plus 16 is 36. Let me get the square root on each side. So that's going to give me that n minus 4 is equal to positive or -6. Right? The square root of 36 is 6. Let me move this -4 over here to the right side as a +4. So I have that n is equal to positive or -6 plus 4. So let me write that at the side. N is -6 plus 4, and n is equal to +6 plus 4. I know -6 plus 4 is -2, so that's my first answer. I know 6 plus 4 is 10, so that's my second answer. And then you guys might be like, oh, this is going to be so simple. Well, let's pick up the notch a little. What if I have a square root that is not a perfect square? So let's take a look. Number 23. It's okay for a square root to not be perfect. We can deal with radicals. So what I'm going to do, everything that has a letter on the left side, this minus 8k, I'm going to put it as a plus 8k. I'm going to end up combining those two terms later. -4k, positive 8k. This -93, I'm going to move it to the other side as a positive 93. Okay? So the left side, I have k squared plus 4k in a space. Notice I combined my like terms. -4k, positive 8k is positive 4. And this is equal to 93. The leading coefficient, the first number, it's a 1, so that's good. And again, if it is not a 1, if I had a number in front of k squared, divide everything. Divide everything by that number. Okay, but in this case, it's 1. So then I look at the second number, positive 4. What's the half of positive 4? Well, in my case, positive 2. And I'm even going to write it down because I'm about to use it. What's 2 squared? What's 2 times 2? Well, 4. So let me add a 4 to both sides. So that's going to give me that k plus 2 squared is equal to 97. Right? Because 93 plus 4 is 97. And then I have to do the square root on both sides. On the left side, it's cool because I get k plus 2 easily. On the right side, I get positive or negative square root of 97. If you guys type it on a calculator, it's going to say, well, might give you guys a decimal, but I'm not going to simplify. I'm going to keep it as radical 97. I know we talked about before how to simplify radicals. So if you need to simplify a radical, please do so. This one we cannot simplify. And what I mean with simplify a radical, remember, square root 97, break it into two radicals, that two numbers that multiply equals 97, one of them being a perfect square. So that's what I mean. We did that before. Unfortunately, here we cannot simplify this. And then to have my k by itself, this plus 2, let me move it over as a minus 2. So I have that k is equal to positive or negative radical 97 minus 2. So I'm just going to say, well, My first box, because I see on my homework, it seems like I have two boxes in the word and in between. My first one, let me write the number that doesn't have the radical first. So I'm going to write -2 plus a radical 97. And then I have -2 minus radical 97. I'm going to leave the radical at the end. Okay, that's it. We cannot simplify the radical, so it stays as a radical. Take a look at one more example. I'm going to separate my sides through the equal sign. Everything that has a letter on the left side, everything that does not on the right side. So this plus 24, let me move it over as a -24. So that gives me p squared plus 14p is equal to -29. My leading coefficient is a 1, so I look at the second number, 14. The half of 14 is 7, so let me even write a +7. Then I ask myself, what's 7 squared? 7 times 7. Well, I get 49. So plus 49 on both sides. The left side, p squared plus 14p plus 49. That factors as p plus 7 all squared. Right, I was completing the squared. On the right side, -29 plus 49, that is 20. Now let me get the square root on each side. So that gives me that p plus 7 is equal to plus or minus the square root of 20. Now the square root of 20 can be simplified. That simplifies to 2 radical 5. Remember we talked about simplifying before. What I did, I was like, oh, square root of 20. I can break that as 2 radicals, 4 times 5. Square root of 4 is a perfect square, so that becomes 2 radical 5. Okay. My plus 7, so I'm going to have p is equal to my plus 7, moves over as a -7, plus or minus 2 radical 5. So my two answers, remember I have two spaces here. My first one will be -7 minus 2 radical 5. And the other one will be -7 plus 2 radical 5. Notice that when I had radicals, I wrote my number without a radical first.